Good afternoon, everybody. It is 12:12 p.m. Mountain Time on Monday, April 19th, and I'm doing this video a little earlier because we're kind of at a crucial point here with Bitcoin. So before we get into it, I'm going to ask you, as always, if you like what you're seeing in these videos, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button. We've made it over 100 subscribers, so thank you so much for that. Next goal is 1,000. We'll see if we can get there, but do want to remind you that none of this is financial advice. It is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. Do your own research, make your own decisions. Hopefully I give you something to think about. But we are looking at a $55,680 Bitcoin, $55,700. And I wanted to do this because I just made a buy on Bitcoin. I have another buy area with the stop loss at 51,950, which brings it about 5% I'm willing to risk. At a 5% loss, I'm willing to risk. My target for this trade, I do obviously hold some that I just hold, but the target for this trade, we're going to use the futures chart to figure that out. So here we go. Let's get into it. I guess I'm already getting into it, but you already know that I follow this, and over the weekend, should we create gaps? I always look at gaps, and gaps are essentially nothing. They don't really mean anything. All it means is that the price opened higher than the previous high or lower than the previous low, and it leaves like an open gap where there's no connecting candles on the chart. Now, there's reasons behind that usually, but it's just kind of how it plays out on the chart. And they, for whatever reason, just tend to fill. They don't always fill, as you can see. December 24th, we have a gap here that hasn't filled. It's always good to keep an eye on it. If you follow Tesla's chart, it had tons of gaps on the way up. NIO's chart had tons of gaps on the way up, and that's stock related. But anyways, I'm pretty proud of myself. I was very, very, very patient. I'm a more sensitive person, and I have to, I think, fight more to stay in control of my emotions, and I like to chase, and I need to be aware of that and hold myself back from chasing. So when we dropped to under 51,000 and we ran up to like 57,500, it was looking pretty good, but I still didn't trust it, and I just wanted to wait, and I was willing to miss it. Now, good if you got in at 51,000 and you caught that and you ran it up and sold at 50, then great. That wasn't a trade that I don't generally, I like to buy dips, but I don't like to try and catch falling knives. I don't, who knows how far down that could have how far that could have gone. And if you buy, it's like, oh, cheap, you're getting it cheap, but then it just keeps getting cheaper and cheaper, and you end up at a pretty significant size loss. So I don't like to play that game. I have my strategies for stuff like that that I won't get into here, but it's always better, in my experience, to be patient. And so far, I wanted to do this video early because I do think the price is going to move up from here. I think that having traded in the stock market for 14 years, I am very strongly of the feeling that everything's manipulated, and I do feel like there's billions of dollars in control, and the little guys like us, we're here trying to pick up the scraps. But I think, like, when you look at how everything lined up, it makes perfect sense to me. But let's look at the chart a little bit. So we got this gap here, and we did close it. We closed it exactly 54,450. And this is from a couple weeks ago. This gap also, the smaller gap here at 59,405, also didn't close. We still have that gap. We have to close it on the upside now. But we also have an overhead gap now, which is a good thing. We want to close this gap to the upside. And if gaps tend to close, that's what we're trying to do. So anyways, we had a low today on the futures chart of 54,450. So I was watching the Bitcoin price, and it dropped down below there, and I almost prematurely, like, oh yeah, it dropped below, but the futures didn't. So you have to watch that. But anyways, the other thing that nicely lined up is a nice bounce right off the 50-day moving average. So we have a gap close with a stronger level of support. The 200 stronger than the 50, but the 50 is stronger than shorter time frame. So I like to see that at least for a bounce. So I entered a trade, and that's my goal, is to hit that low of April 16th on Friday of 60,165, and that's I'll probably sell a little bit before that, honestly, just because I want to be safe if it shouldn't make it there. I think it will, but I'll probably sell a little bit before that just because I like to play it on the safe side. Anyways, that's what I was looking at to enter my trade. So let's go right into the price of Bitcoin. And the reason I bring up, just close the dominance chart. The reason I bring up Bitcoin, and that's all I'm really talking about today, is because if you've been in here for more than a month, Bitcoin controls the market. If Bitcoin's going up, that gives strength to everything else. If Bitcoin goes down, you see Bitcoin fell and everything fell except for SOL. If anybody was an SOL, great. Like they worked out great. We'll talk about another nice dips and other stuff other than Bitcoin that I bought the downside on, bought the dip on, and I do have stop losses in place. I do trade on small margin, not large margin, and I use that for my trades. I hold my holdings in my cash or tether positions, and then I execute my trades on small margin positions. Anyways, so the price of Bitcoin, it looked like it was going to make it back into that trend line, and it didn't. It threatened to, but I'm giving it time to play out. But I think that I'm happy with my entry. I'm following all the same supports and resistances that we've had intact here for a while now. The main thing was the futures chart that I was watching for that gap to close, though. Now let's go to the Bitcoin dominance chart that I'm going to touch on this briefly. This should be a shorter video. Like I think I said that it was going to be a shorter video, but of course I always say that, right? So we are looking for maybe something to bounce here. Nothing confirmed yet. We have a lower high and a lower low, so it could continue to drop down as far as the dominance goes, and that would happen if Bitcoin held or went down and altcoins held or went up, respectively. So we are, if you look at a lot of the charts, let's see if I can find a good one. Maybe Bitcoin Cash. We are seeing that on the shorter time frames. Where was the big drop at? So we took the big drop, and not a good example. I'm not going to get into this if I can't think of this on the spot here. Looking for a pattern. Should have done this beforehand. So anyways, this is kind of there. You could see we took this drop, came up, came back down, retested, got rejected. So what we're looking for confirmation on these drops when we buy the dip, what I'm looking, probably going to see a little bit of editing there. The doorbell went off and my dog started barking. But anyways, visiting back to this on the downward, the confirmation of buying the dip for me comes in these patterns where we drop, we come up, right? And then what I'm looking for is an extension of these two candles. This isn't a perfect line. This is just an example, right? Probably pretty good right there. And I'm looking for it to test, and then I'm looking for after the second drop to retest and either get rejected or break through. So that's what I'll be looking for on Bitcoin dominance chart. That's what I'll be looking for on Bitcoin's chart, and pretty much anything I decided to buy the dip on with my stop loss in place. You've seen how fast it can happen. So, I mean, if you're in a trade or you're trading on margin, you got to have a stop loss in place, and you definitely have to. I'm going to bring up some news articles before we get into the altcoins, just because how the drop happened, how it ties into the futures chart, and just kind of how everything just kind of ties together and makes sense. But just wanted to touch briefly on the Bitcoin dominance. Obviously, we took a drop in the total market cap of our altcoins. I mean, look at that. That's a significant drop. And this is what can happen in crypto. I mean, it can happen in anything, but it's pretty common in crypto, actually. It went down to 791 billion from that day of 953 billion. So what is that, like a 22% drop? And we were at a 1.119, so 1.12 trillion, down to about like a 30% drop. So you can see what could happen. I see us probably flattening out here and then moving back up, because I don't think it's over. I could be wrong. Again, I could be wrong on my Bitcoin trade. I could be wrong on the stuff that I entered, but everything is kind of lining up to me, and I think the worst of it is over. So let me get more into that before I get into some of these altcoins. I'll close out of here, and I'm going to go over a few of the major ones. Some of them that I bought, and then one really, really shocking move. I think we talked about it on the live stream Saturday. Just mentioned it real quick. Ren, it's something I know nothing about, and I just kind of drew some support areas. But anyways, let's go over what happened. So what happened was there was a few things that tied together, and having this gap open on the futures chart makes me think that it was planned, right? So first of all, Bitcoin mining hash rate drops as blackouts instituted in China. So China had blackouts, and the hash rate of Bitcoin dropped 40%. Here we go, 24.5% in a 24-hour period. Binance Pool by 20%, BTC.com by 18.9%, and Pooln by 33%. China runs the Bitcoin mining game. They're doing more than anyone. So you have that, right? So that's number one. Then there's a rumor. I'm yet to see anything confirmed. Like, I haven't seen anything confirmed that Bitcoin and crypto markets plummet as U.S. Treasury rumors spread. So the rumor is that if you follow FX Hedge on Twitter, U.S. Treasury to charge several financial institutions for money laundering using cryptocurrencies. Sources. 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 Okay. This may be true. I mean, it's not like it couldn't happen. It's not like it hasn't happened before. I don't know. I kind of see it as a positive, because I think cash is easier to launder than cryptocurrency. Cash is the most hideable asset that I could ever think of, where cryptocurrency is not. Like, so if you're able to find out people, if you're able to bust people for laundering, that's a good thing. That means that there'll be less laundering, from like what Janet Yellen said. But anyways, I like getting on Twitter. The nice thing about Twitter is, I mean, you could just go in and cash tag BTC, and you could go to the top stories, which could be from months ago, 10 hours ago, crypto for 7-year. I don't know who this is, but you could see March crash versus today crash, comparing. So you can go through like what happened, see other people's ideas on it, see the latest, and see if you could find some news on it. That's the first thing I go to. People are literally addicted to being the first to sharing this stuff. So I go right to it and I try and find it, and that's what I found. And yeah, and then lastly, leverage trading. So Sunday, Bitcoin flash crash sees 10 billion in positions liquidated. So that means that people lost all their money that they were leveraging. So the exchanges that they were on forced them to sell everything and pay back what they were borrowing. So a lot of people trade on 10 times leverage. They're just, I don't know. And the thing is, like, this information can be seen beforehand. You could see how much money is being leveraged. I don't know where. I never look at it. What I do is I go on KuCoin and I see what the borrowing percentage is. When the borrowing percentage is low, like 0.05% a day, that means that there's not a lot of leverage being used. When it's high, I've seen it as high as like 0.4% a day, then that means that a lot of people are borrowing. Demand is high, so they're charging more. And these are just everyday people like you and me putting their money up on KuCoin to be borrowed, and then they're getting paid a percentage from the KuCoin exchange. Or I think Binance has their own tether that they use. But anyways, that's how it works. And I mean, if you're at 10 times margin, like what That means I could be doing this wrong, but 10% drop and your money's gone. I mean, that doesn't take much. But anyways, we saw how big of a run we had in altcoins. It was, maybe it was easily my best week ever. Just that's happening more and more. And when that happens, it's like I force myself to take some profits at least and make sure I have stop losses in place, because the further they run, the bigger corrections they see. The question is when do they correct, So that's what you don't really know. We have tools to use that. Obviously, like, I jumped the gun on Dogecoin a little bit, sold at 18. It is one that I bought back into, so I'm doing well on that. But I missed like a 10 cent, which would be like a 50% gain, but I'm okay with that. And I gotta be. I'm going to be wrong sometimes. I'm going to make mistakes sometimes. Anyways, so here's the thing, right? I feel like markets are manipulated. I feel like they're controlled, and I just, after seeing things happen for so long, it's like there's really nothing that can tell me otherwise. It's like trying to convince me that the world is flat by saying like, yeah, it's not controlled, but it kind of has to be. So I see like these things, like this is a rumor. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Nothing confirmed. This happening. I mean, can you control a blackout? That's pushing it a little conspiracy theory, but I don't put anything past anybody who wants $10 billion, because what happens, right, is, when somebody's shorting a stock, or when somebody's longing a stock and you have a stop loss in place, and somebody wants to pressure to the downside by shorting a stock, you have to force those stop losses to get hit, or force somebody to get to a point where they want to sell in order to drop the price more than what you're shorting or what you and everybody else is shorting. So in this, when there's this much leverage and people can see this, right, all you have to do is force into a liquidation. They don't even have a choice. They get liquidated. It's like a margin call when you're shorting a stock and the stock goes up. You don't even have a choice. You get into a position where you don't have enough money to cover what you're borrowing. And, banks and institutions and exchanges are going to protect themselves, and they're going to force your sale. And you're going to do that on the ask. And when you're in a margin long, like, you're going to do that on the bid, and it's going to drop the price, and it's going to drop it fast. And then what happens is you see a bounce, right? And that's usually the short sellers covering, along with maybe some people buying the dip. So that it seems like it all ties together with these three things and the gap in the futures chart and it closing perfectly. So that's why I'm taking a chance here on Bitcoin. I have my stop loss in place. I have my target, and we'll see how that plays out. Now, some other ones to finish up the video. I did buy 4 other cryptocurrencies. I bought Dogecoin. Okay, so here we're looking at Dogecoin, and I'm going to add a line to this daily chart because you can see how perfectly traded here. And I feel like an hour or two before every daily candle and an hour or two after, we always drop. So there's no rhyme or reason or science behind that, but I feel like just through watching, it always does. So when we dropped here and we broke back above the close is when I bought Dogecoin, because it was just looking stronger. We didn't quite come down to the previous low, so we put in a higher low. And I bought here right about 0.285, so I missed out on about 10 cents from where I sold before, but doing pretty well with that now. So bought into that because it was looking strong, and I know it's a meme coin, I know it's a joke, but the chart is looking strong. We do have falling volume, but it's still strong, and we have, fell 2 days, but it looks like we're going to finish over yesterday's volume today. We still have 5.5 hours left in the candle. The other one I bought was Bitcoin Cash, just because the long-term output, my long-term vision on it, I see it going higher, just because we're still a long ways away from all-time high, even though that was kind of a fluke because it opened on Coinbase and shot way up before it started trading, and then it dropped. So I'm looking more at this line right here, this 17, we'll call it 1765. I am looking at that area. I think that we have a very strong chance of getting there. It seems like a big move, but when you look at the weekly chart and what we've come from and where we're at, it's really not as big. I mean, it was a 20% drop, I believe, or more. I think it was 26% on Bitcoin Cash, but about that, just because the longer term scenario I'm looking at, and I'll trade it. I have my holding, and then I'll trade it, and then we looked at XRP. So hopefully we just break out from here. If it comes down, I'll look to, we want to break this trend line, and eventually we want to break that from previous highs. So we'll see. Maybe it can put in some kind of inverse head and shoulders here. I hope we don't come back down to 132 and a half. That wouldn't be the end of the world, but looking strong. Got in here right about 130 when we broke out of this little. I would make it around I think it was 132.8 is where I bought it at. Probably jumped the gun on a little bit. I don't advise that, but if it didn't make it above this, I was ready to sell it right away. And then Link, and I'll tell you why I bought into Link. This Coinbase chart is very confusing. I haven't been watching the Coinbase price action, but this candle on Link was crazy. It still finished in the red. So if it would have finished in the green, I would have been a lot more confident that we would have continued. You could see we got rejected right at this resistance level, but we dropped all the way from. We had a high of 44, previous all-time high of 44.37. I dropped all the way down to 32, and then almost made it all back in a day. So the reason I bought this, and it only came down to, let's go to the Binance chart. That is an index. Let's go to Binance, let's go to futures, see if that's a little different. Because I use the Binance charts a lot, even though I can't use the exchange. Okay, so yeah, you could see, I don't know what happened on Coinbase because, we did not come down there. But Binance, we came down to 29. So that's what I was watching. I'm like, yeah, I'm liking this. So once it got to about here, I took a buy right above. Sorry, I don't have anything drawn out on this exchange's chart. I bought, and it's doing really well, and we're almost back down to where I bought. So, but I do feel really strongly that Bitcoin will start to move up. It's flattening out for the last hour or so, so that's good. And lastly, want to end the video just warning you, if this, I think this was the biggest one-day drop ever, whether it be dollar-wise or percentage-wise, or in some kind of time frame. It happened in like an hour. And if that doesn't get you, check out what happened to Ren on Binance. This is insane. We looked at this Saturday, and we just talked about how it was hanging out in this channel. So, we talked about staying in here, and, if it broke down, it wouldn't be looking too good. If it broke up, it would be looking better. So this is where you should have had your stop loss set, maybe slightly below, because sometimes they like to mess with you and bounce it underneath and then run it up. So you hit your stop loss and then it runs up, and you're like, geez, they got me. Anyways, this went from a high of $1.10, 1.106, down to just over 1.5 cents. And it happened very quickly. Very quickly. There's the half-hour candle. There's the 15-minute. It's 15 minutes it happened in. 5-minute candle. It went from 89 cents to 1.5 cents within 5 minutes. Let's look at the 1-minute candles. Let's see how fast this really happened. So that's how quick it could happen. So, especially if you're trading margin, this happened in a minute, and this happened. This isn't a glitch. Looks like the only thing I could think of is a liquidity issue on Binance with Ren, is that they didn't have it covered. So it's like a penny stock. And if you make any comparisons, the world of crypto right now is like penny stocks. You got a cool logo, you got a cool name, and you get the right people behind it pumping it. It goes up. They sell, it goes down. It could be extremely illiquid, and you get a low float penny stock and the bids are not very large. Somebody starts selling and it drops the price significantly. And it can be like a waterfall effect. And then you run out of, your market makers run out of REN tokens to support it, and boom, that's end of the road for that. So happened in 1 minute, and that happened. That's not a glitch. So I mean, I know I've said in a few videos, like, warning, do your own research. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. You could lose all your money in crypto. Well, people did, and people lost 10 billion worth. I mean, I don't really like to go over 2 times margin, right? And I really don't like to borrow more than I actually have in there. That just means that, it can go to 0 and I'm not in the negative. So, that's where, it's at. I wanted to do this video just because, like, we're at this crucial point on the futures chart. I wanted to do it early. I'm like, I got to talk about it now because, like, there's a very, very easy trade setup, right? You have, and I say easy trade, not that it's certain that it's going to work out in my favor, but for me, this is like the perfect scenario, right? We have a gap close. We have the 50-day moving average. And then, I mean, just put a stop loss, where you're comfortable with losing. If this is, I mean, you're buying close to the bottom or at the bottom if you buy here. And if it's not, you have your stop loss as tight as you care for it to be. I mean, you could literally put it like 1% below the 50-day moving average, just in case it drops below and then bounces up and recovers. You don't get stopped out. Or you could put it at the 50-day moving average, and it's like, if it breaks down below, I'll sell it. And then if it gets back above it, I'll buy it. And you could repeat that as many times as you want. I mean, we closed the gap, we bounced off the 50-day moving average, actually slightly above it. So I like my odds here. And I have all my safety at my risk tolerance set in place. And I think we move up. And I'm not always right, but let's see how that plays out. And it could take a few days, and that's fine. But anyways, thanks for joining me. Thank you again. I did a live stream on Saturday. Those who joined me and those who watch, I saw like 80 people watch it, and it's almost 2 hours long. So went longer, but the time went longer than planned. But the time flew by. It was fun. I had fun. It's like always things to talk about. It's just like these videos. I plan on doing like 15 minutes, and I end up going like 20, 25. But definitely wanted to talk about this. Thank you for watching the live stream. I'm going to do another one during the week sometime. Maybe not this week, but it's Saturday afternoon isn't generally a good time for people. But I just wanted to do it, and I was resting that day, just relaxing. So it was pretty fun. Anyways, if you did like today's video, hit a like button, hit the subscribe button. I would appreciate it greatly. I do enjoy doing this, and it gives me motivation and confirmation that I'm actually providing something that people care to listen to. Again, it is entertainment purposes, informational purposes, educational purposes only. So do your own research, and like, if you put your stop losses into place, because I mean, whoever was able to get out with that liquidity, I mean, on REN, it's it could be very, very dangerous. So you can lose all your money in crypto, and I suggest just not trading on margin. But if you do, don't go 10x, and if you do, I mean, don't be in it very long, because I do think it's a controlled market, and I do think that when those that are controlling the market see opportunity, I mean, that's got to be the easiest short in the world. If you have the money to put the pressure on it like that, you short it and you force $10 billion into liquidation, and then you cover, and then you're back in long, and it's just, I don't know, everything lines up, everything adds up. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying I'm right about this, but that's just my thought process. And I've always made the most money when I think, if I were in charge of this price, what would I do to screw everybody over or take everybody's money? And that's kind of worked out for me in the past. And when I get too confident, I get put in check all the time. So anyways, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching. Please hit the like, please hit the subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thanks.